Welcome to Straight Talk for Entrepreneurs, where we reveal what it really takes to build a successful business. Whether you are starting with an idea or growing your business, this is the show for you. My guests and I will show you how to build a strong mindset, a powerful body, a profitable business. Hi, I'm Brandon C. White, and this is Build a Business Success Secrets. So today we're talking about, I was writing it down and I was like, I'll just ask Andy on the air. Why not? But what do you effectively call your career? Is it a video? Because you're more than just a guy who shoots video. So when you sell your service or someone who's listening, what do you call it?
Well, that actually, are we recording now?
We recorded, we've been recording. That's my style. You know that. If it was planned, then it would feel planned. That's not what we do here at Build a Business Success Secrets, Andy.
Yeah, no problem. I'm in your hands. No, so it depends on who's asking, honestly. But if someone asks me on the street, what do you do? I say I'm a nonfiction filmmaker. I say I'm a nonfiction filmmaker or a documentary and commercial filmmaker.
Got it.
But depending on a gig to a gig, I'm a director of photography. I'm a director. I'm a cinematographer. Sometimes I'm just an editor. I like to steer away from the term videographer because videographer is more like someone who's just running a video camera at like an event, say, whereas a filmmaker is someone who's putting thought into the story in the process. Not to say videographers aren't thinking about getting good shots and angles and coverage and everything, but there's like a distinction there to me,
Yeah, I understand. It's like the difference between, and probably a bunch of people get mad, but I don't really care. The difference between a webmaster and a software engineer. There is a big difference. Not that one is better or worse than the other. They're just very different in their role. Mm-hmm. And I think people confuse that. So
yeah, you could say the same about a cook and a chef, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it doesn't, one's not better or worse, just different.
Yeah.
So how did you get started in this? Actually, I've known you for 23 years.
Sounds about right.
22 years. I actually used to be taller than Andy. How tall are you?
Probably at some point 6'5".
Yeah, no, I was never taller than Andy, I think, ever. But it has been a while. How did you get started in this profession? And I also am interested in where you thought you would go, and if you wound up in that same spot.
Well, so how I got started in filmmaking was, I wouldn't call it a second career because I didn't really have a first career, but I went to undergrad to study sciences. So I was, my bachelor's degree is in aquatic biology or marine biology.
Let me translate that for the listeners and viewers. We now have viewers, Andy. We're going to be in 80,000 homes, believe it or not, but on cable. But that means that Andy was diving in the Channel Islands, enjoying himself on a regular basis, going to school in Santa Barbara.
Pretty much.
And surfing.
I can't recommend that university. My wife and I met there. We ended up moving back here now with kids. We live in the same town we went to college. You can't beat Santa Barbara. And the science programs and engineering at UC Santa Barbara are fantastic. But I was a transfer there, and my junior and senior year went through this program to become certified as a technical scientific diver. And so my schedule every week was Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, and Tuesday, Thursday, sunrise to sunset, I was on boats, diving at the Channel Islands, diving along the coast, doing, sampling or measurements or monitoring of all of the, graduate laboratories, marine experiments. So it was awesome to be a 21-year-old driving boats around, scuba diving all day. And I wanted to stay in that profession to become a marine biologist. And I was going to go to grad school, master's or PhD program for the sciences. But then I found out about this program at Montana State University is a master's of fine arts in science and natural history filmmaking. That was new at the time. And basically the program was they only accepted people with at least a Bachelor of Science degree or higher degree in science. And they thought it's so difficult to make scientifically responsible films, I guess, that they thought it would be easier to turn scientists into filmmakers than to try to get filmmakers to think and like scientists and document science in a certain way.
No offense to them, but that sounds like a terrible idea.
I think it's not true at all. I think they're different, and you can do both, or you can do one or the other, but they're not exclusive. So yeah, I went to that program. It was a 3-year master's program. I dropped out, so I'm a film school dropout.
Why did you drop out? I remember that, but I don't remember why.
Yeah, so to back up a little bit, my then girlfriend, now wife, also applied, also from UC Santa Barbara. She got in like no problem to this program. I got waitlisted, I think, because they didn't want 2 people from the same school. So I drove overnight from Santa Barbara to Bozeman, Montana, met with the instructors and the dean of the school and everything, and told them how much I wanted to do it, and they let me in. And then they said, well, we've already got somebody else from UC Santa Barbara. I said, oh yeah, it's my girlfriend. So we were both in that program and dropped out for different reasons. I just realized I didn't need a master's in filmmaking to be a filmmaker necessarily. I didn't want to teach, and the master's would be something I could use to teach, college level courses or something. But I think so much of filmmaking, once I got through the instruction portion, is just doing the work. And having a degree doesn't mean you're any better at doing the work. So I dropped out and started working rather than.
But both you and your wife have changed industries or careers. But what made you think about filmmaking? Was it just, hey, I think that's interesting? Was it because you saw a film that had a science bend on it? Was it because you were filming underwater stuff and you were like, hey, I think this is cool, I want to make movies? What was it? Do you remember?
Yeah, I've always been a photographer, and since I was small, I've always had a camera. Studied it from the age of 10 or 12. I got my first camera and took photography all through junior high and high school. So I've always, even when I was doing the science stuff, I had a camera and I was documenting science and that sort of stuff. But what really got me into it was in the summer between junior and senior year of college, I was cast on a TV show to be a researcher.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember that.
Ocean Challenge. It was a co-production of between Jean-Michel Cousteau and James Cameron. So I applied as they were looking for young, enthusiastic, ocean-minded people. But it was like a reality show, and it was going to be a sort of a reboot of Jacques Cousteau's Calypso crew, where they sailed around the world exploring.
That was an awesome show. I do remember that. You were on that boat for a while. Yeah.
So a bunch of people tried out. I got cast along with a young woman from Sweden. I think she was from Sweden. And we got sent to Iceland, to the Vestmannaeyjar, or the Westman Islands off the southern coast of Iceland, to basically Free Willy. If you remember Keiko the whale from the movie Free Willy.
Now I remember you telling me a story. I don't know if you want to tell it, but anyway, about the whale.
I've peed on Free Willy a few times, unintentionally. As part of the training, you're on a boat. You go off the back of the boat And he was so desperate for human contact as a result of being in captivity and with trainers his whole life that any human activity he just would glom onto. And you're going off the back of the boat and they say, pretend like he's not there. It happened a few times.
What happened with that show? Did that show air?
It didn't. No, it never aired. The pilot didn't air. I think it was just too high level type A male producers decided they couldn't get along on what the storyline was or whatever. And they scrapped it. So yeah, it never went to air. But on that, I was on camera, meaning I was being filmed as a protagonist, learning about this project where they were trying to reintroduce a captive whale back into the wild, where he had been captured like 21 years previously as a juvenile. But in that process, when they found out I knew how to take good pictures and video, they started sending me up with a camera wherever I was going, up in the helicopter for spotting, that kind of stuff. And I also saw the film crew side of it. And I thought, wow, you can, the science, you're documenting the natural world when you're studying the sciences. You're studying something, and then it's often minutia for years, documenting it so that you can put out that peer-reviewed article to further the foundation of the understanding of whatever that realm of science is. And I saw this filmmaking as just a different avenue for documenting and relating scientific concepts about the natural world, but in a much more broad and digestible way than the Journal of fill in the blank Marine Snails International or something, So that's how I transitioned from the sciences into filmmaking as what I saw as a potential career. Was
James Cameron with you?
He was not in the field with us. Jean-Michel, I think, was there once, but James Cameron is who hired me. And funnily enough, after the show was over, I went back to school. Then I saw this flyer about this Masters of Fine Arts program in Science and Natural History Filmmaking. And like any grad school application, you need letters of recommendation. So I had a letter of recommendation to film school from James Cameron.
Oh, well.
I think that's why they agreed to meet with me. Like, who's this guy? Who's this kid?
Yeah, I'd say that's a like ace in your back pocket, right?
Yeah. So
you go there and you just decided that what they were teaching you didn't necessarily need to be a filmmaker, mainly because, I don't know, mainly I'm asking because did you realize it was more of an art than a science? No pun intended here.
Well, I think I did need what they were teaching me for the first 15 months, the instructional stuff. That's all the technical, the theory, film school, basically. And that was extremely useful. And I had great mentors there. My cinematography mentor, his name's Rick Rosenthal. He was one of the underwater DPs or directors of photography for the Blue Planet series, which was like the benchmark at the time, still is, for that sort of, they call it blue chip natural history documentary, just like knock your eyes out, beautiful cinematography. So I got that out of it, but then it was like, well, the next year and a half or 2 years is just making a film, and going through that process is important. And I have friends who matriculated through the program, got their degree, and they're happy. But at this point in our careers, we're all pretty much at the same point. I pretty much,
It didn't propel them forward. But if you had been a teacher, maybe it gave you some credibility, but that was never your intent.
Yeah, but it's a craft. To use this, like the chef analogy again, you can go to the CIA, the Culinary Institute of America, and wear the coat and the hat and learn from the best of the best for however many years you go to that program, or you can learn on the job by going to work in Thomas Keller's kitchen at the French Laundry. And after a few years, you're sort of getting to the same point, just through different paths. It's educational training versus apprenticeship model. And I chose to go the apprenticeship, learn on the job kind of model, more or less.
So when you leave, did you have an idea how you were going to make money,
No,
like pay your mortgage?
no. I drove a forklift at the Home Depot. Dropped out of film school and drove a forklift at the Home Depot, and started getting jobs. I went back to I apprenticed with James Cameron's director of photography, Vince Pace, for I don't know, about 6 months or a year, working with them. They were developing a 3D camera system that was the inception for what they used to shoot Avatar and some of their other 3D films. And so I was basically a camera tech handler operator for them, unpaid, just sort of figuring out how this camera system works.
So you were interning for them. Where was this?
They were based in Burbank.
And you moved to Burbank?
No, I would just drive down, for a day or two every week or other week. Or
from
whatever.
Santa Barbara, because you had moved back to Santa Barbara?
Yeah.
And you were driving the forklift to pay your bills while interning?
Yeah, more or less.
I never knew that. I must have missed that piece somewhere in the journey.
Because it's the existence of being an independent filmmaker is, it's the same now as it was then. It's just I'm good, and people know I'm good at what I do, and so I get jobs now. But it's all a gig-based existence, So back then, it's just you're trying. I'm apprenticing, doing free work for a super A-list celebrity filmmaker, thinking, oh, this could lead to something. And maybe it could have if I stuck with it, but I didn't like the sort of good old boy mentality of straight up apprenticeship. So I stopped the apprenticeship and just started trying to get gigs. And
what does that mean? You didn't like the good old boy mentality of apprenticeship?
I don't know. I'm not the type of person who was in fraternities in college. I had the opportunity to play Division I football and said no, because I'm not that type of person who sort of gets along in the yes sir, yes ma'am sort of structure, and I felt like the unpaid apprentice stuff, Hollywood track, just wasn't really for me. I wanted to try to do my own thing and learn my own ways, I guess.
But you did probably meet some important people there. I can't imagine that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But I left that and then couldn't find regular gigs after sort of turning my back on that approach either. So I ended up getting a full-time salary position with a production company for about a year. But that is my pathway. That was then on Nantucket Island off of Massachusetts. So I lived on Nantucket for a year working for a company out there that was called Plum TV. And it was started by, you remember Nantucket Nectars, those juice bottles?
I remember you working for Plum TV, and they launched that TV channel that was going to be there, Martha's Vineyard. Is that right?
Yeah, they had this. So Nantucket Nectars was owned by Tom and Tom. And Tom Scott was one of the Toms, and he's from Nantucket. He bought a local access TV station there that they would put like committee meetings and basketball, high school football games and stuff like that on, and hired some talented people and invested in some equipment and turned it into a local sort of HGTV type channel. So you have a place that's a resort market like that with a lot of food and wine and seasonal celebrities and a film festival and a writing festival. So there was like a weekly news magazine. There were cooking shows with celebrity chefs, interviews with the A and B list celebrities who would live out there seasonally or visit out there, and coverage of like the culture of an interesting place. And so they had that, Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard. the Hamptons, Aspen, Vale, Telluride, Sun Valley, and Miami Beach.
So did they go and buy all the local access channels effectively, or buy a channel, a local channel on that whatever cable distributors network?
Yeah, in each of those markets, they bought basically the channel that would have shown Wayne's World. You know, the local cable access channel that everybody had, whether you had a rabbit ears or satellite TV or cable. And so I worked on Nantucket, salaried as a producer, shooter, editor for a year, and I was at that point a few years older than most of the younger people who they hired, and I'd been I'd studied filmmakers at a master's level, even though I didn't have my master's degree. And I'd done all of this work with high definition video cameras through the work I did in Iceland, and then also the high end stuff with James Cameron, his DP, working on their camera system. So I had this access and knowledge of HD that a lot of people didn't at that point, because this is now 2005. Which is really the transition period from like regular video, standard definition video, to HD. And so I got a reputation of like somebody who could run HD productions and shoot higher end HD content. So after a year of being on salary, I then was engaged to my girlfriend, which is the whole reason we moved to the West Coast, because my wife's a veterinarian and that's where she went to vet school. It's Tufts University out there. So we moved across the country together, only for me to then work 100 miles away on an island. and we hardly saw each other. So I thought, this is absence makes the heart grow fonder. So I want to get out of here, back to my fiance. And so I approached the company and made them an offer to become a contractor, independent contractor with them. And that was in 2006. And that's basically how I still operate today, 15 years later.
As an independent contract. What happened to Plum TV?
They went under a few years later, or dissolved, or I don't know that they ever really turned a profit. I'm not sure. But all the people that were there, you see them on LinkedIn, they've all spread out to other places. So yeah, I don't think a company even exists anymore. But that was my pathway. That's how I became a freelance filmmaker. So I went from that was the turning point. And then I started they were my only client when I went freelance. And then I got more and more. And now I have clients I've been working with since 2006, basically, that I still work with off and on. And clients come and go. Sometimes I do broadcast. Sometimes it's independent, foundation work, or documentary work, or feature documentary shooting, everything.
And what's your preference?
What do I like to work on?
Yeah, like if I was like, hey, Andy, because you just went through the menu of things, and you also do brand shoots, right? You do I don't know, are they called like mini short films? The 2-minute cool things that you do?
The term that's come around in the last couple of years is branded content. So yeah, when a company wants you to shoot something that isn't necessarily highly featuring their product, but the lifestyle associated with it, that's branded content, and that's fun. But what I like to shoot is not so much dictated by what the deliverable is, whether it's for the web, for the TV, for a big screen. It's more about what I'm actually filming. And I like to film people in the natural world. That's what I gravitate towards. No matter whether it's a science topic or a personal documentary, or anything in between, or a broadcast commercial TV spot. My favorite thing is working with natural light and people in the context of the natural world or the environment. And that's not necessarily meaning it has to be an environmental issue. It could be a footwear brand or a travel company or whatever. But if you look at the work I've done, and when people hire me, they see that I'm drawn to that. And that's what I think I do best.
So I'm going to say back what I think it is. I mean, I know what you do, but for other people out there listening who might not understand what that means, it basically means that you don't do set work.
No, not yeah. So I don't do. I've never worked in the narrative environment, which is narrative films are fiction. What you would think of as a feature film. I do shoot on sets and in studios with commercial clients, product photography and videography, and that sort of stuff. I
But
would
you
say,
like the natural, like uh, you did that whole thing for that brand with the Western horse. I actually saw the lady on Instagram the other day with her kid face down in the paddock in the mud. Uh,
yeah, I know who that is. Yeah,
yeah. Um, so that, out in nature, effectively working with natural light and a more realistic um, recording or story of someone in their natural environment.
yeah, yeah. Even when I do more commercial stuff, it's always with that angle that like this is being captured naturally. It's not a lot of staged, not a lot of directed stuff in that sense. Not a lot of fakery or acting or anything.
You're
I've done
really,
that.
you observe quietly.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a large person, but I like to feel like I'm not really, standing out or driving things as much as knowing where to set people up or where to set myself up to capture things that come across as natural. That's my,
There could be a lot more to that.
yeah, yeah. Um, but I mean, that's not to say you're not directing. It's just a different approach to it.
Yeah. No, it works out. I like it. It's more real. And I think, yeah, the word is authentic. I don't, that seems to be an overused word these days. Fake people tend to use the word authentic, which I'm conflicted about when I see it on the internet. But I think that's what basically is happening around. But I have another question. When you, for people listening out there, because I know there's some people listening who are interested in how you actually pay your mortgage every 30 days as a gig. I don't know if gig economy, but a freelancer effectively, right? You're your own contractor. You eat what you kill. You've got to sell, negotiate, film, and do the product. Like you're a very small shop who has to effectively do it all in the sense of the business. And then there's some people out there who I know are thinking, wow, well, I'd like to make a film, or I'd like to do a brand. What do you call it? Brand narrative? Branded content. And one of the things that you and I talk about, I'm always, even though we've done 2 films so far, I'm always surprised at is how much footage you need to actually get a 2-minute branded content. So how much footage do you have to shoot to get a 2-minute branded content type thing?
So there's different approaches. In the old days of documentary production, they would say the shooting ratio for a feature film, so something that's scripted, not a documentary, something that has a script and actors and everything's planned out, the shooting ratio for a normal film is like 20-1. Meaning if it's a 2-hour film, you're rolling 40 hours of film. Because you have to think that's, take 1, take 13, you're repeating things. And that's just based on performance of the crew and the actors and everything of getting the right shot. With documentary, it's more like 100-1 because nothing is planned out. So people work, I think the average length for a documentary that you would see on Netflix or Amazon Prime or in the theaters, that's a feature length documentary. It's like 4 to 6 years typically for a documentary, from the time you think about doing it to the time when people see it. Because you're talking about people's lives, you're not setting things up. You're waiting for events to happen. you're figuring out who the characters are, what the stories are, and then so much of documentaries happens in how you edit them together. So yeah, in terms of how much you have to shoot for, it's a lot. But then when you get down to the stuff that's still considered nonfiction, like a commercial, um, the commercials that they make now, which are sort of what they call lifestyle, where it's not necessarily like a family of actors sitting around a table eating cereal. They want to have someone who maybe is like an Instagram influencer who's known, who you go out, you think of like a car ad now. All the car ads have some Instagram phenom photographer, outdoor, beautiful young person who's like driving their car around. That's still nonfiction. But you get into something like that and you have shots and shot lists and storyboards. So your shooting ratio is way off. But if you're talking about a strict documentary, it's a huge amount. It's a 100-to-1 ratio in terms of what you have to shoot to get your final product.
So would that include a branded content type thing where you do a 2 minute or a minute 50 or 2:30? So is it 200 or 100 minutes for every 1 minute of video?
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a set. It's so variable. Some of the stuff I shoot, I can shoot in a day to get a 30-second ad, and it's fantastic. Other stuff, because of the nature of the topic, you might need different locations. So also for a 30-second ad, it might take a week, because you got to get, if say it's a car ad, you've got to get some skiing, you got to get some stuff at the beach, because that's where all the car goes. So there's no set amount.
It's really a lot of work.
It's a huge amount of work. And I tell people that filmmaking is like, actually doing the work is like my third job, because you've got to find work, which often once you get to a certain point, the work finds you, but that doesn't mean it just, your calendar fills up. You've got to pitch people. You've got to convince them that, yes, you are the right person to do this job, or you've got to, put a bug in somebody's ear. Like, weren't you thinking about, doing something this spring for this product or this subject or this campaign or whatever? Like, oh yeah, let's talk about that. So there's that whole sort of salesperson mode you go into of just cultivating work. And so often the like the ideation of a topic, that's often not paid. At some point, they're like, okay, we're going to do it. Here's our agreement. Here's our contract. There's a creative fee associated in that to pay you for the time that's not actually physically production, but pre-production and writing and research and all that stuff. But everything leading up to that is just talking, finding work. It'd be like, riding bikes or surfing with some people in the valley up there, just to figure out where your next deal is or investment is or something like that. And then on the back end, there's the reverse. As a one-person operation, you're invoicing and you're tracking expenses and dealing with QuickBooks and all that kind of stuff. So,
do you outsource any of that?
I don't. You've told me I should.
Yeah, for like how many years?
Yeah, most of
that's super hard. What's your least favorite part of the business part of what you have to do?
Moving cases and suit bags of equipment around. That's in November for the Western product, the Western shorts that you saw. I went through the whole length of Texas by car because COVID and didn't want to fly everywhere over the course of a week. So we went from Amarillo to Houston, which is basically the whole state, north to south. And I think in 8 days, I had 7 different hotel rooms. And that's just tired. When you have, 6 or 8 cases of equipment and you got to go to this hotel and get it all out of your car because you're not going to leave $150,000 or $200,000 worth of equipment in your car at some hotel in the middle of Texas or anywhere. So yeah, that it's because you get done with shooting at last light. You always shoot to sunset because that's the best time of day. For me, when I do natural light stuff, I'm always filming through sunset. Then you got to drive back to your hotel, which is typically not right down the street from where the beautiful place is you were filming. You get to your hotel. At some point you eat, and then you got to start offloading all your media and charging all of your stuff. When you have a team with you, this is spread out throughout the team. But when you're doing it at the level that a lot of productions want to do it, especially now with COVID, tighter crews and all that sort of stuff, everyone's wearing all sorts of different hats. So sometimes I'm still setting alarms for 3 a.m., even though I didn't go to bed till midnight, and I have to get up at 5 to transfer my batteries onto new chargers. So the next day we've got, 8 full batteries instead of only 4. So the logistical side of making all that equipment work, which is getting it places and keeping it charged and memory cards free and unloaded to your redundant hard drives, that's the most tedious part. More tedious.
That sounds really hard and awful. And I know it's hard. I don't know if it's awful, but it's definitely hard and sometimes miserable because I've lived it with you. But what keeps you going to keep doing this for 15 years as running your own small business and basically being a solopreneur?
I mean, I would love to develop myself into more of a business, have partners, have a larger stable of creative people that I work with on a regular basis, that we're all contained within one unit. There's lots of people I collaborate with all the time, but they're often like me, independent or whatever. But your question is what keeps you doing it? If it's
I mean, getting up at 3 a.m. to change the batteries is awful.
Yeah, I mean, what keeps me doing it? One, I'm of the mentality I like to do stuff. We've biked together several times. I like to challenge myself. I'm a large human being, and I like to bike up steep hills and hike up steep hills, and I like challenges. But even more than that, I like learning new things, not necessarily about my craft, but just stuff in the world and meeting people, experiencing different cultures and viewpoints, learning about new topics. I loved Jeopardy as a kid. I love having that like, oh, I've been there. Oh, I've seen that. I've, talked to somebody who does that. At this point in my career, I mean, I've filmed so many different things in so many different places and met so many different people that, as much as I am enviable of colleagues and friends in my profession and in totally different professions who have more stability than I do, I think a lot of them envy the opportunities I've had to see things and go places and kind of just like do cool stuff. And that's the most fun. And I love capturing images, still or moving. When you're out somewhere and the light is just perfect and somebody's in front of it and it's just everything comes together. It's like such a cool feeling to know that you got that, and that there's not a lot of people who have the patience to wait for those moments that I really cherish, and also the stamina to make it through those crappy hotel rooms for a week, just to be kneeling in the mud to get some cool perspective that someone hasn't thought of before. It's fun. It's like a scavenger hunt of images,
I think that's a good way to put it. I like that word, stamina. Stamina is a underutilized word that really sums up, though, what you've got to do to be an entrepreneur. One thing I was thinking of while you were talking is didn't you do a few Kickstarter reels?
I've done some of those, yeah.
And I know there's people out there who they always ask me, I haven't done a Kickstarter or a crowdfunding campaign yet. I've talked to you about it, but When you did those, did you find that that having a high quality reel or short or whatever that is really important to that sort of application to be able to raise the money and get people interested?
I'd say, yeah, definitely. And they're not that difficult to make or expensive to make, really, depending on what it is you're trying to raise money for. But typically, if you're at the point where you're doing a Kickstarter, you've got some sort of deck or many iterations of a deck of your product or your service or whatever it is. Um, and it's really easy to have someone interview you as the entrepreneur who's trying to make this happen, in a documentary format, and then edit it together with some B-roll of you working hard at your computer and some elements of that deck, whether it's animations or stills or schematics or architectural drawings or exploded views of your CAD design or whatever. You throw those in there, and yeah, everyone that I've done for clients, I mean, it's not a controlled experiment, but everyone's raised more than they've asked for when they've got a good video to go along with it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, people aren't going to read through everything. They want to see a short video. They want to be entertained all the time. So moving images and stories are a great way to do that.
What do you think in today's internet age is the right length that a person will pay attention and it will hold their attention to? Is it a minute? Like, I feel like back in the early days, people would watch longer clips, and I don't know I'm interested in your thought, whether that was 3 minutes and now it's a minute 45. I almost feel like 2 minutes is, as crazy as it sounds, feels long now. So what do you think about that from all of your experience?
I think you need to have a diverse set of deliverables for the same product. So you can have that 5 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute video that has, if we're talking about for a business, for a company, for branded content, or it could be also for a nonprofit that has some campaign or initiative. Could be environmental, it could be social justice, it could be, fair pay in the workplace or something like that. Whatever the topic is, you can have your short documentary, your 3, 5, 7 minute, even longer film, but you need to have, what you used to call a trailer or a teaser. Now it's like you actually need to think of that 1 minute version as the only version most of the people will actually see. I see it all the time, in the outdoor world that I do a lot of work in. If it's something from like REI or Patagonia, and they put on Instagram the 1 minute version, or maybe it's 2 minutes and it goes over to Instagram TV because you can play longer form there than the 1 minute on the screen. You have to assume that people don't go deep and swipe up for more and go to the link in the bio to watch the full film. So that 1 minute thing almost becomes as important as the full thing that you've spent so long on editing and funding and telling the story for. And then also you need that 15-second one that'll play in the stories or whatever, a TikTok version or something like that. So yeah, it's definitely, there's still a market to make real length deliverables, films, or whatever you want to call them, but you have to assume that people won't watch the full thing.
Yeah, so it's 15 seconds, 1 minute, and then whatever your longer content is. But your 15-second and your 1 minute, you better get your key points or whatever your hook is or whatever it is you gotta set it in those two reels.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, like, the reason that Patagonia funds a 22-minute long documentary about the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, yes, they think it's important, but they're putting their company's name on it. They're generating this perception of the lifestyle and value system that they stand for. And that's done just as successfully in a 1 minute piece that more people see as it is in the full story, sadly enough, as it is in the full story that's really relevant, that fewer people will see. So as a filmmaker, I see the value in the finished product, and I watch the full films for most of these things because I'm curious and I consume them not just to learn professionally, but I like them. That's why I like making them too. But realistically, you're just associating your brand, whether that brand is a company or a nonprofit, with this visual and oral document that translates to people what your values are. And that's the takeaway. That can be done in 15 seconds through the right choice of shots. It can be done even more easily in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's important. I appreciate you sharing that because we all want to get our messages out there. But filmmaking and branded content or short films really has changed. I mean, it's in many ways sort of sad. But there's this speed and clicking and dopamine rushes and all this stuff going on the internet that you gotta do that, and that takes a real skill. I am sensitive to your time because I know Andy the filmmaker turns into Andy the father at certain times of day.
Which you mentioned that filmmaking is a really good trainer for being a parent. If you can survive documentary filmmaking, and being a parent's harder. I'm phrasing this the wrong way, but if you can live on a sword fishing boat for 28 days and sleep just 3 hours a night, in 40-foot seas, when you have a kid and you don't sleep that much and you're tired and sore all the time as you get older, it's like, well, I had good training. I knew I survived one arduous experience. I can survive another arduous experience, namely parenthood. So
good training. So you've had very good training for your two kids.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have that much gray hair. I'm actually impressed. What are 3 high percentage tips that you would give to fellow solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, freelancers, really people running their own business?
Specific to my industry?
It could be in just whatever you feel would be good advice for somebody who's out there doing that sort of thing. Yeah.
I would say learn the syntax of the job that you do as best you can. And I don't mean lingo as it exists, more the theory, the foundational theories of whatever you're working on. I think a lot of people in my industry or any industry, it's what's like talk the talk, use the terminology, but they don't necessarily know. It's like someone starting a business without having gone to business school. I think even if you didn't go to business school, if you can go back and read some books, educate yourself, try to get those like 10,000 hours of knowledge base, however you can in whatever your profession is. That's what I've found has really helped me in recent years, is being able to, explain and have foundations for when I pitch somebody on something. Whether it's, for me, the other day I was talking to a collaborator and I brought up Aristotle's views on storytelling and the notion of praxis and mythos. And it's not just to impress somebody, it's real. And when you talk about things in that context, it makes you look smart, but it helps your process. So that was a long answer. Don't just talk the talk, have some foundational knowledge, deep knowledge about whatever you're trying to get people to pay you to do. Because at some point they'll realize you're just talking the talk. You can't back it up. I got to think of 2 more.
Yeah.
What'd you call them? High
HPTs, high percentage tips. There, I converted high percentage spots from fishing is what we called them. Like, hey, take me to an HPS today, Brandon. All right, Andy, we'll take you to an HPS, and you're gonna probably catch fish. It's a high percentage spot. So I turned that into HPTs, high percentage tips.
Well, I'm gonna use that in my answer then, because be a good person who people want to get along with. And the metaphor I've always used is, could you live on a boat with this person? Whenever I want to work with somebody, whether I'm hiring them to like do electricity on my house, or if it's for work and I want to be on a film crew, like I want to work around people who I can get along with. And so that's always my thing. Like, if you could live on a boat with them, then you could be on a film crew with them. Then you could be start a business with them, spend hours and hours dedicated to this thing together.
It's good advice. It's great advice. I think I'd take that a step further and just morph it into, if you want to be with you think you're going to do a business with someone, go on a boat trip for a week. And this is not a cruise ship. This is something that is smaller quarters. So I'd say less than 75 foot. That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, if you can dine and eat and sleep and poop near somebody and still get along.
Day 3 is the key.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Day 3 is the key. Like, hey, first 2 days, people can fake it.
And then, I mean, maybe this is bad advice, but I'm not a big proponent of fake it till you make it. I think I always try to be honest and humble and ask questions. When someone says something to me that I don't know the terminology, I like right away. What does that mean? HPT. What's HPT? That's just for me personally. I like to learn something every day, I guess is what that comes down to. Ask a lot of questions. Don't pretend like you know everything about everything, because no one will believe you ever do. Everybody learns something every day. I don't care who you are. And don't try to hide that fact.
No, I like that. I think, it gets expanded into take responsibility when things go wrong, because the people who want to give you 50 excuses, what they don't realize is that you basically, when they do that, have told you that they're not in control and that it could happen again. And I like that advice, which is really take responsibility and what you're doing. Like, hey, I don't understand that.
Yeah. Life is not a sitcom. If the fish dies when your kid goes out of town, don't try to buy a new one and sneak it in the tank, because that's just not going to end well. That's like a comedic plot point. If something goes wrong, own up to it. If you can't do something, say no. And why not? And it's often not because you don't know how, it's because they're not paying you enough or whatever the reason is. Like, don't be afraid to say no. Tell the truth. I don't know.
I think it's good advice. I was thinking of what's that Ben Stiller movie when he paints the cat? Do you know the Fockers?
Yeah. Meet the Parents.
You meet the parents when he paints the cat. So, hey man, thanks a lot. This was great. I actually learned some things today about you and that I didn't even know. Which I don't know. Maybe that's a reflection on me. I haven't asked enough questions. No, I think it's more of a reflection that you don't talk when we ride up the hills, and I ask all the questions and you don't talk.
Well, I weigh about 100 pounds more than you. It's physics, Brandon. I can't talk.
That's what my friend Sean said. He's like, you talk all the time. I'm like, yeah, we're just riding up the hill. I need something to talk about.
In survival mode.
Yeah, well, I understand that too. Well, thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
I do think that I know you have to go here in a minute, so I do appreciate you taking Friday afternoon and sharing this information. And I know people will be grateful for it, because doing what you do is hard. Is hard everything, like hard being a solopreneur, hard being the filmmaker, the editor, the script writer. You've done voiceovers. You've composed original music for our one movie. So you've done all sorts of crazy stuff.
Well, I've loved talking to you as usual. It's hard, but it's not a sob story. I like what I do.
No, it's not a sob story. You're not suffering. You wouldn't keep doing it. So
Yeah,
thanks a lot. I do. Yeah, thanks a lot, man.
no problem. Anytime.
So, hey, I do want you to do a voice. Have you heard my voiceover?
No.
Oh, well, listen to a podcast tonight and listen to the professional intro
Okay.
and tell me, I have the script. I wrote the script. Tell me if you think you can do that better.
Sure.
I never even thought about it, but then I heard your voice in here. I was like,
Oh, I go in when I do voiceovers, it's totally different. More enunciation and,
but you have that very deep voice. I have to use this damn Rodecaster Pro to deepen my late night FM DJ voice.
Have you ever wanted to build a business?
There you go. There you go. Listen to my thing. Why don't you charge for that?
Oh, yeah.
I will pay you for it. I'm just saying, why don't you market that as a service?
Yeah. I guess I just need an agent.
Andy.
Built for tough.
You should use that. If you have another mic, don't you?
Oh, I've got mics.
No,
yeah.
I know you do. Like, yeah, you could do it. Yeah, will you listen to that this weekend?
Sure.
It's just I do an intro and then there's the professional promo that I paid some guy to do. I wrote the script and I actually had to edit it and speed it up because it was like too slow. I was like, people get on this podcast, they need to be jacked up. We're doing fun stuff. We don't need to be slow. And then I sped it up and then I just got tired of going back and forth. And it's better than what I had, but I think you could do a better job.
I'll listen to it. I can get some super quality mics from my brother-in-law down the street. Two of my brother-in-laws are feature film composers. So they've got all kinds of recording and mic stuff at their disposal.
Well, yeah, all you have to do is get a decent mic that you have, and we can clean it up with Dolby too. I'm post-processing in Dolby now.
Oh, cool. Yeah, when I record voiceovers, I just use a shotgun mic in my closet surrounded by clothes. It softens everything. There's no echo or anything. But yeah.
All right, man. Have a good weekend. Thanks a lot.
See you, Brandon. Thanks.
See you, Andy.